It began with a simple goal: learn how to seduce. Ava, 32, confident but defeated, wanted more. She hired Elena, a renowned dating coach known for sculpting irresistible allure. Elena promised secrets to unlock a married man's heart: charm, mystery, and control. Ava trembled with excitement, imagining stolen kisses and whispered confessions. But every lesson crept deeper: fading boundaries, secret messages, midnight instructions. Soon, Elena wasn't just mentoring seduction. She was creating dependence. Ava followed each rule until the lines blurred. She started asking, who was training whom? When the man she pursued became entangled and Elena's instructions turned darker, Ava realized the prey wasn't the husband at all. It was her. So if you think you've heard it all, you haven't. Hit follow on your favorite platform and leave us a comment, because the next story might just change the way you see everything. Don't miss a single twisted turn. Chapter 1. The first lesson. Ava Green was done waiting. She stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, the steam from her shower still fogging the glass. 32. Divorced. Successful on paper. Marketing director at a boutique firm. But lonely. Exhaustingly so. For the past year, she'd been circling a fantasy she couldn't shake. James Whitmore. Married. Charming. Her client. And completely untouchable. She knew how reckless it was, but she didn't care anymore. Flirting wasn't enough. She wanted control. For once. She wanted him to want her. Desperately. Secretly. Dangerously. That's when she found Elena Vale. It was a podcast interview that pulled Ava in. Elena Vale, the elite seduction coach behind Washington's most powerful women. Elena didn't sound like a dating guru. She sounded like a surgeon dissecting the male psyche, confident, composed, even cold. No gimmicks, no giggles, just raw, strategic seduction, delivered in a low, hypnotic voice. Ava reached out that night. Elena's reply came within the hour. Come alone, no makeup, no perfume, and wear something that makes you feel invisible. The address was in Georgetown. Discreet. Minimal signage. Just a brass number plate and a camera above the door. Inside, it was silent. Clean. Surgical. Elena appeared from a back room like a ghost. She was wearing a fitted gray silk robe, hair loose for the first time. You came, she said softly. You invited me, Ava replied, scanning the space. No heels, Elena noticed. Good, that means you're grounded. Ava didn't sit. Let's not play. Elena studied her. You know, she said, circling slowly, most women who walk away from me eventually come back. Not because I'm irreplaceable, because the world is forgettable. Ava's hands were steady. You drugged me. Elena stopped walking. I never touched your drinks, Ava? You placed cameras in my apartment. I placed clarity in your life. You turned James against me. Elena tilted her head. He was never yours. That's your first real lie. You didn't want him. You wanted a reaction. Ava's voice dropped. I came here to tell you it's over. Elena smiled faintly. Over? She moved closer, too close. No, Ava, this is just your final lesson, the one I've saved for last. She pulled out a small black envelope and held it up like a priest offering communion. Inside, printed screenshots. Ava's search history, her texts, her encrypted file structure. You think I didn't know, Elena whispered. Every betrayal has a scent, and yours was loud. Ava took a step back. You've lost your mind. No, I found it. In every woman who came crawling into my studio, begging to be seen. You don't need love, Ava. You need purpose. I gave you that. You gave me surveillance and fear and power. Don't forget that. The room shifted. The candles flickered. Ava knew this was the climax Elena had engineered, a staged confrontation meant to break her again. But she didn't flinch. She reached into her coat, pulled out the flash drive, held it up between them. I made copies, she said, of everything. Your clients, your recordings, your mirror room. You think I came here to surrender? Elena's face twitched for the first time. You came to threaten me? No, Ava whispered. I came to end you. She dropped the flash drive onto the floor, crushed it with her heel, and pulled out a second one. Elena lunged forward, but Ava raised a hand. This one's a decoy, but I've already sent the real files to 5 people. And if anything happens to me, they go straight to the press. Elena stopped cold, for the first time, uncertain. You taught me control, Ava said, but you forgot the first rule of seduction. Elena narrowed her eyes, which is, never underestimate your target. She turned her back on Elena and walked toward the door. Elena didn't move, didn't breathe. Ava looked over her shoulder one last time. You never trained me. I trained myself on how to walk away. And then she left. Outside, the wind was colder than she remembered. For the first time in weeks, her shoulders weren't tight. Her jaw wasn't clenched. Her past, James, the games, the obsession, was still behind her. But she was finally ahead of it. Chapter 7. Her last client. 6 months later, Ava opened a new office. Bright, welcoming, filled with natural light. Plants lined the windows. Paintings warmed the walls. A stark contrast to Elena's cold studio. She had left her old life behind completely. A fresh start. Different city. Different name on the door. Ava Green, relationship counseling and personal empowerment coach. Not seduction, empowerment. But Ava still carried lessons she couldn't unlearn. Clients came and went, grateful and smiling, unaware of her past. But Ava knew how easily trust could be weaponized. So she protected her clients fiercely, empowering them without manipulation. She heard Elena move to another city, changed names, opened another secret studio. But this time, Ava didn't chase her. She knew one day Elena's own hunger would destroy her. It always did. Then, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, her receptionist buzzed, "Your 3:00 is here. Elena Vale?" Ava's heart skipped, mouth dry. She hadn't booked an Elena Vale, but she knew exactly who stood waiting. "Send her in." The door opened. Elena stepped inside, older, thinner, the sharpness replaced by a quiet uncertainty. She looked humbled, exhausted. She sat down slowly. "Hello, Ava." Ava kept her voice neutral. "I'm surprised to see you here." Elena hesitated, then spoke softly. "I came because I'm tired." Ava raised an eyebrow. "Of?" "Myself," Elena admitted. "My own game." Ava studied her. "You came for help?" "I came because you won," Elena whispered. "Because your freedom haunted me." Ava leaned back, composed. "You're asking me for advice?" Elena met her gaze steadily. "Yes." For a long moment, Ava said nothing. She imagined revenge, punishment, exposure. But those were Elena's games, not hers. "You taught me seduction, Elena. But do you know what I taught myself after I left?" "What?" "Forgiveness, not for you, but for myself, for ever believing I wasn't enough." Elena's eyes glistened. Her voice cracked, barely audible. "How?" "Stop playing," Ava said gently. "Stop seducing yourself into believing power equals worth." Elena stared downward, shoulders trembling. I don't know who I am without this, she whispered. You didn't train women, Elena, Ava said softly. You trapped them because you were already trapped. You wanted us to hurt as badly as you did. Elena's tears fell silently. What happens next? Elena asked finally. You let go, Ava answered. And you heal. Elena left quietly, promising nothing, but carrying something she'd never had before, hope. Ava didn't know if Elena would change, but she'd offered her the one thing Elena never gave her, the freedom to choose her own path. That night, Ava stood on her balcony overlooking the city. She had once been a woman desperate for control, a woman who thought seduction meant power and power meant worth. Now, standing alone, she finally knew the truth. Power wasn't control. Seduction wasn't victory. Real power came from freedom. Freedom from games. Freedom from fear. Freedom from needing anyone else's validation. And that freedom was something nobody could ever take away. Tall, mid-40s, impossibly elegant in a black silk blouse, her silver blonde hair swept into a severe bun. She didn't shake hands. She simply said, You're here for power, not love. Sit. Ava poured everything out, her attraction to James, his marriage, the subtle games she'd played, the way he smiled longer than he should have, the way he once brushed her arm when his wife wasn't looking. The obsession was shameful, but Elena didn't blink. She asked one question. Do you want him to love you or to need you? Ava paused. I'll say, both. Elena leaned forward. Then we train. The first lesson wasn't what Ava expected. You don't touch him. You don't compliment him. You don't even laugh at his jokes, Elena said, circling her like a hawk. You make him feel like you see something deeper in him, something even his wife has never noticed. That's how you pull a married man, not through seduction, through significance. Ava scribbled notes, heart racing. Elena's intensity was addictive, clinical. She spoke like a woman who'd weaponized human emotion. Ava didn't realize it yet, but she wasn't being taught. She was being broken down. Each lesson grew more personal. Elena made her delete dating apps, journal about her childhood insecurities, practice staring into the mirror while reciting phrases like, I'm not available. You'll have to prove you're worth my time. I only fall for unavailable men. At first it felt empowering, then confusing. Elena blurred lines between coaching and control. 1 week in, Ava was told to send James a single text. You crossed my mind today. It made me smile. That's all. No emoji, no punctuation. She waited all day for a reply. When it came, it was exactly what Elena predicted. You have no idea what that did to me. And just like that, James became the addict. He started lingering after meetings, texting, at night. Nothing overt, just suggestions. Ava relished the power, but Elena wasn't satisfied. You're not seducing him. You're taming him, Elena said. And once he's tamed, you burn the leash and vanish. But I want to be with him. Elena smiled for the first time, cold and sharp. No, Ava, you want to win. That's very different. Things shifted after that. Elena began texting at strange hours, midnight, 3 a.m. Her messages became invasive. What time did he last text you? Did you wear the heels I told you to? Do you feel in control? Or does he? Ava started ignoring a few. Then Elena showed up at her work. I'm not just your trainer. I'm your mirror, she whispered at the front desk. Eyes narrowed. Don't lie to your mirror. Ava's confidence began to fray. What started as empowerment now felt like surveillance. Then came the second assignment. Send him a voicemail. Soft voice. One line. I thought about your mouth, white tone. Hang up. No context. Ava hesitated. Elena, this feels uncomfortable? Elena interrupted. Good. Real seduction starts at the edge of fear. Ava sent the message. She couldn't sleep that night. James called twice. Left no message. The next day, he stared at her for too long during a client pitch. He was unraveling, and Elena was watching. Chapter 2. The control test. Ava didn't remember falling asleep, but she remembered the dream. In it, Elena stood in the shadows of her bedroom, whispering instructions Ava couldn't hear. Her lips moved, her fingers pointed, but the sound was buried in static, just like Ava's thoughts since this began. She woke up sweating. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Elena. Today, you break the pattern. Let him chase. Be colder. Be vague. But give him just enough hope. Ava hadn't spoken to James since the voicemail. He hadn't spoken to her either, not directly, but his presence had changed. He lingered, watched, looked nervous, and oddly hungry. The power felt good, but it also felt like standing on ice with fire beneath. That morning, Ava arrived at work, dressed down, no lipstick, no heels, hair in a messy bun. Elena called it tactical retreat. He's used to seeing you polished. Show him the version no one else sees. Make him wonder who gets that version. And it worked. James froze when he saw her, stared, swallowed hard. He didn't say a word during their meeting, just kept looking at her like she was a different woman, a woman who didn't need his attention anymore. When she walked past his office, she didn't glance in. 5 minutes later, he texted, Did I do something wrong? Ava showed it to Elena over lunch. Perfect, Elena said without smiling. Now we flip the script. The script came with rules. No. Direct responses for 24 hours. Don't mention the voicemail. Let it live in his mind like a fever. And when you do reply, say only this. Not everything's about you. Ava followed every rule, and it worked. James became erratic. His texts multiplied. He stayed late at the office for no reason. Sent her a Spotify playlist called If You Knew. But Ava began to feel something she hadn't expected. Guilt. I'm manipulating someone's marriage, she told Elena. You're awakening someone's truth, Elena countered. It sounded noble, but Ava's stomach didn't agree. The turning point came on a Thursday. Elena asked her to meet at a members-only club. Dimly lit, velvet couches, candles, no phones allowed. I want to introduce you to someone who understands power, she said cryptically. Ava assumed it was a mentor, maybe a former client. Instead, it was a man in his 50s, polished, direct, and far too familiar with Elena. He kissed her on the cheek, then turned to Ava. So, you're the next project. Excuse me, Ava said. Elena answered for him. Ava, meet Gregory. He's a behavioral profiler. Helps me refine my work. Gregory leaned back, studying her. Tell me about James. In 5 sentences or less. Ava hesitated, then explained. When she was done, Gregory said, You're not seducing James. You're seducing yourself through him. He's just the mirror. The words landed like a slap. I think I've had enough, Ava said, standing. But Elena grabbed her wrist, not hard, but firm. Sit down. You haven't passed the control test. Ava left anyway, shaken. Back home, she stared at her phone. James had texted again. Are you okay? Something feels different. She didn't reply. Then Elena texted, You failed. And another, If you want to be weak, go back to being invisible. And a final one, You want control? Prove it. Send him a photo. Your eyes only. Nothing else. Then go dark. Ava threw the phone on the couch and buried her face in her hands. What started as empowerment now felt like coercion, a game she couldn't quit. The next day, Ava broke her silence. Not to James, but to herself. She journaled for the first time in months. I thought I was the one hunting, but I'm the one being hunted. She didn't send the photo. She didn't answer Elena. She didn't reply to James. But deep down, she knew neither of them was done with her yet. Chapter 3. The Mirror Room. The silence should have brought Ava peace. No texts, no calls, no whispered instructions. But it didn't. It brought noise. The kind that fills your head when you realize you've been living by someone else's script. It had been 3 days since she'd spoken to Elena. 2, since James's last message. Ava had blocked both, and yet she couldn't stop glancing at her phone. She tried to resume normal life. Coffee shop mornings, morning meetings, a Pilates class she hadn't attended in weeks, but everything felt altered. When she passed her reflection, she didn't recognize the woman she saw. More confident, yes, but also more distant. Her smile now had layers. Her voice had weight. She'd become someone who could weaponize silence, and she didn't know if she liked it. On the 4th night, there was a knock at her door. Ava looked through the peephole. Elena, no warning, no text, just her, standing in a black coat, hair perfect, expression unreadable. Ava's heart hammered. She almost didn't open the door, but she did. I need 10 minutes, Elena said, stepping inside without waiting for permission. She looked around Ava's apartment like she was scanning for secrets. I see you've redecorated, she said coldly. No more chaos, just control. Ava folded her arms. You can't just show up here. I wouldn't have, Elena said, setting a small object on the table. If you hadn't passed the test. What test? The silence. Ava stared at the object. It was a key, small, silver, tied to a black velvet ribbon. Elena, what is this? She smiled, faintly. The mirror room. You're ready. The next day, curiosity won. The address Elena sent led to an unmarked building just outside the city. Industrial, old, and abandoned-looking, except for one polished steel door on the side. The key fit. Inside, Ava found a single hallway, lined with mirrors, floor to ceiling, dozens of doors, dim lighting, soft music, no sign of anyone else. She walked slowly, heart pounding. One door was slightly ajar. Inside, a woman stood in the center of a mirrored chamber, walls, ceiling, even the floor reflecting back. It wasn't Elena. It was Ava. A recording played over hidden speakers. Lesson 3. Control is not about domination. It's about reflection. You will become what he needs until he can't live without you. Then you become who you really are and leave him unable to function without your absence. The door locked behind her. For the next hour, Ava was alone with herself. The room offered nothing but her own gaze from every angle. She screamed once. It echoed endlessly. Then the lights dimmed. Another recording played. Control isn't power. It's seduction, disguised as surrender. When she was finally released, Elena waited outside. You hate me now, she said. Ava didn't reply. Elena handed her a folder. Inside were photos. James with his wife. James entering Ava's office. James looking haunted. Why do you have these? Ava asked. Elena stepped closer. Because I protect my investments. I'm not your investment, Ava snapped. No? Elena tilted her head. Then why haven't you deleted me from your life? Why do you keep listening, even now? Ava closed the folder. She felt it in her bones. Elena wasn't a coach. She was an addict, with Ava as her latest fix. Back home, Ava poured a glass of wine and stared at the folder, the photos, the notes, the voice inside her head. Something had shifted, not in James, not in Elena, in her. She didn't crave James anymore, or validation. She craved freedom. But the game had already changed, and there was no way out unless she rewrote the rules. The next morning she texted James, "Can we talk in private? No pressure." He responded in under 10 seconds. "Yes, please. Tell me when." Ava smiled faintly. She had one more lesson to learn, and maybe teach. Chapter 4. Red Lines. They met in a hotel bar, one of those quiet corporate lounges tucked away in a boutique downtown hotel. Dim lighting, piano music in the background, enough distance from the real world to pretend nothing mattered. Ava arrived first. She didn't wear the perfume Elena had once instructed her to. She didn't wear the silk blouse that showed just enough collarbone. She wore what she wanted: clean lines, soft denim, and no distractions. When James walked in, he looked nervous, palms in pockets, wedding ring still on. He sat across from her without saying a word. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was loaded. "You've been quiet," he finally said. "You've been watching," she replied. That startled him. Then he smiled, softly. "You're right." Ava stirred her drink. "You told me once your wife doesn't really see you anymore." He nodded. "I shouldn't have." "But you did, because you wanted someone to notice you." "I did. I always did. But that wasn't about me, James. That was about what you were missing." He looked down, ashamed. "I didn't mean for this to get complicated." "It's always been complicated. You just never admitted it." He exhaled. Ava leaned in. "What would you do if I said I wanted you?" James froze. "Would you leave her?" A long pause. "No." And just like that, the fantasy shattered. After the bar, Ava didn't cry. She didn't spiral. She walked 3 blocks in the summer heat, removed her heels, and stood barefoot at the edge of a fountain. She had seduced him, controlled him, proved to herself that she could have him. But now, she didn't want him. The seduction had been a mirror, reflecting her emptiness back at her. And she realized. Elena knew that all along. Elena called later that night. "I heard you met," she said, as if reading her thoughts. "You had me followed?" "I have you watched." "There's a difference." "You're sick." "No," Elena said calmly. "I'm free. You're the one still begging to be seen." Ava laughed, but it wasn't joyful. "You think you created me?" "No," Elena whispered. "I woke you up." The next day, Ava arrived at Elena's office unannounced. The assistant tried to stop her, but she pushed through. Elena was mid-session with a new client, early 20s, wide-eyed, fragile. Ava waited until the woman left. "I want out," Ava said. Elena folded her hands. "Out of what?" "This game, this addiction you dress up as empowerment. You came to me because I thought I needed you. And now?" Ava stared. "Now I see you for what you are, a parasite with a doctorate in seduction." Elena stood. "You think you're different from me? You're not. You craved control, same as I did. You just dressed it in romance." Ava stepped closer. "The difference is, I still have a soul." That night, Ava burned the folder, every photo, every note, every trace of James. She threw her phone in the sink and let it short-circuit under running water. Then she did something she hadn't done in over a year. She slept 8 hours, no dreams, no noise, just silence and peace. But peace never lasts. The next morning, a package arrived at her door. No return address. Inside, a flash drive, labeled Lesson 5, Exposure. Chapter 5, The Trapdoor. Ava stared at the flash drive for 15 minutes before touching it. It sat on her kitchen counter like a loaded weapon, silent, polished, full of secrets. Her breath was shallow, her palms damp. There was no note, no sender, just the words written on the label. Lesson 5, Exposure. She didn't want to know what was on it, but she couldn't throw it away either. She waited until nightfall. The contents were simple, a single folder titled The Study. Inside were dozens of video clips, grainy, low angle, security cam style. Each one featured her, sitting across from James during office meetings, walking into Elena's studio, practicing eye contact in a mirror, even one of her sleeping in her apartment. Ava recoiled. There were no cameras in her apartment. At least, there weren't supposed to be. She slammed the laptop shut, hands trembling. The next morning, she called a locksmith, changed every lock, tossed every USB device in her house, bought a phone in cash, called her building's manager to ask about service visits. No one had a record of anyone entering her place. Elena had lied. And more than that, Elena had invaded her life. The line between mentor and predator had been crossed. No, obliterated. Ava didn't call the police. Not yet. She didn't want to give Elena the satisfaction of panic, but she did start planning something else. She reached out to a woman named Lena Ruiz, a former client of Elena's she found through an old podcast interview. It took days to track her down, but when Ava finally reached her, Lena's first words were, "You're trying to get out, aren't you?" Ava blinked. "You too?" Lena sighed. "I started as a client, but Elena doesn't let go. She doesn't train women. She collects them." They met that night in a public cafe. Lena laid it out. Elena didn't just teach seduction, she filmed it. Private sessions were often recorded. Emotional breakdowns were categorized. Some clients were blackmailed into silence. Others simply disappeared. "She trains you to seduce." "Others," Lena said, "but really, she's training herself to control you." Ava asked if anyone had tried to stop her. "Once," Lena said. "She moved cities within 48 hours, changed her name. She's done this before." That night, Ava didn't sleep. She began building a plan. She cataloged every voicemail, every message, every strange encounter. She wrote it all down, created a document, password protected it, backed it up to 3 separate encrypted drives. If Elena wanted to play the exposure game, so could she. But Ava wouldn't strike yet, not until she had the final piece, not until James was ready to talk. The next day, Ava invited James to a rooftop lounge. Neutral territory. He looked pale, tired, worried. "I need to ask you something," Ava said. "Did Elena ever contact you directly?" James paused, then nodded. "Once, weeks ago, said she was your mentor, that I wasn't who I appeared to be. She implied I was being manipulated." Ava swallowed hard. "She said, I'd regret ever touching you." There it was. The trap. Elena hadn't lost control. She was playing the long game. She'd turned Ava into a threat and was now painting her as a monster. If Ava didn't act soon, Elena would win. But Ava wasn't the same woman who knocked on that door weeks ago. She was sharper, colder, and she was done being prey. That night, she sent Elena a message. "Let's finish the lesson. One last meeting, no games, just you and me." Elena's response came an hour later. "My place, Sunday, come alone." Chapter 6, the final session. Sunday arrived like a slow boil. Every hour heavier than the last. Ava wore all black, not because Elena ever told her to, because this time she wasn't a student. She was preparing for war. Hidden in the lining of her coat was a micro recorder, state-of-the-art, voice-activated, gifted to her by Lena Ruiz. The audio would back up everything she needed if things went south. As she stood outside Elena's townhouse, Ava took one long breath and rang the bell. No turning back. The door creaked open, but Elena didn't greet her. Instead, Ava stepped inside to soft piano music and candlelight. The place looked unchanged, cold, minimalist, sterile. But this time, Ava could feel it. The weight behind the perfection, the calculation. Elena waited in the main room,